We have to go through this. Kind of important. In about, what is it? About a month and a half, so about 6 weeks or so, they're going to finish collecting comments from people like us who want to contribute their thoughts about copywriting AI. So this is a call to action by the U.S. Copyright Office in the Library of Congress. But what they do is they go through and they detail what exactly AI is, how AI is used to make things. So this right here says, as described above, generative AI systems will have the ability to produce material that will be copyrightable if it were created by a human author. What are your views on the potential benefits and risks of this technology? How is the use of this technology currently affecting or likely affecting creators, copyright owners, technology developers, researchers, and the public? So it's questions like this. Does the increasing use or distribution of AI-generated material raise any unique issues for your sector or industry as compared to other copyright stakeholders? So let's separate your industry from other industries. They're probably going to use AI to filter all these things, all these responses they're going to get, which is kind of the ironic part. Please identify any papers or studies you believe are relevant to this notice. Are there any statutory or regulatory approaches that have been adopted that are under consideration in other countries that relate to this copyright AI? For example, the UK has their own. I think the EU also has their own AI policies. Is new legislation warranted to address copyright-related issues in generative AI? If so, what should it entail? So basically petitioning for people to, to give info on like what they think, how it should be handled. Training. What kinds of copyright-protected materials to train are used to train AI models, and how are those materials collected and curated? So now they're really digging in here. To what extent a copyright works licensed from copyright owners for use as training materials? This is all the stuff that artists, like traditional artists, have talked about being some of the major concerns with AI generated art. And it's that, how did you train it? Where did the art come from? Do the people who had their art taken, do they know about it? Because all this stuff just exists in like a lump, right? You can't really go in there and like see what pictures were used to train an image generator, right? And by the same token, you couldn't necessarily go in and strip apart an LLM that focuses on, an LLM where that basically focuses on language. You can't go in there and see what books it's been trained on necessarily. Are some or all training materials retained by developers? AI models are training complete, and for what purposes? So when you get the data, what do you do with it afterwards? So they're really digging in here. These are a lot of really good questions. Is it possible for an AI model to unlearn inferences it gained from training on a particular piece of training material? If so, is it economically feasible? In addition to training a model, are there other ways to unlearn inferences from training? As far as I know, there is no way to unlearn for image generation. There is no way to unlearn a face, basically. But there has been a case where an artist's style has been removed from, was it Midjourney? It might have been Stable Diffusion. Could have been all of them, actually. But what happens is people will train it and make a LoRa. So let's put it back in anyways, which I guess in the future could be copyright infringement. So again, kind of a big deal. All that stuff that you're training your own LoRa's on, your favorite album art, your favorite photographer, your favorite porn, all that stuff you're training it on. Well, you might have to unlearn some of that. In light of, we see under what circumstances would the unauthorized use of copyrighted works to train AI models constitute fair use? So if you take, somebody's style, like a bunch of pictures that somebody drew, and then you feed it and you train it, and then you create a derivative work, which is a generation that maybe looks like their style, is that considered fair use? These are serious questions, big serious questions. See, what quantity of training materials generative AI? Let's see, the use of copyright materials and training data set or generative AI models have non-commercial research purposes. I mean, this is very boring to read through, but again, it's very important to know. Should copyright owners have affirmatively opt into the use of their works for training materials, or should they be provided with the means to opt out? Again, when you're building these databases, like these brains, basically, like this could be an on or off button, basically, for existing LLMs. If it were to become like retroactive, for example, everything we're doing right now could be illegal. Even your boy could be illegal somehow. because he's based off of, yeah, it could be, except for his voice. That's mine. This is directly connected to like DMCA, right? What happens if somebody knows, because there's no way to dig into the data and necessarily find out unless you have the data set available to you, which you probably don't. If you know that copyrighted material was used and it was your copyrighted material, what can you do to get that remedied? And it looks like right now there's nothing, but it looks like they want to address that as well. So this is all encompassing, guys, all encompassing. In case of the human creator does not own a copyright, for example, because they have assigned it or because the work was made for hire, should they have the right to object to an AI model being trained on their work? If so, would such a system work? God damn, it's so complicated. I look forward to the stupid ass YouTube content ID system for AI. That's painful just to even think of. Like, already they're pretty bad at recognizing some things, you know? Like Shazam is amazing. I could just be like, Shazam, what is this song? And it's gonna be like, yeah, that was the live rendition that was played at Red Rock Casino on 2016. Blah blah blah. You know, like that's what Shazam will do. But then Content ID on YouTube will be like, nah, that's a Baby Shark song. Yeah, sorry. Baby Shark doo 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 doo. Baby Shark doo 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 doo. Baby Shark.
I don't recognize this song.
Thank God. If copyright owner's consent is required to train generative AI models, how can or should licenses be obtained? Or will they be indefinite license? Can it unlearn if the license runs out? If Mickey Mouse was like, yo, let's make a deal. We'll make an AI, LLM generator, whatever, and you can have your favorite Mickey Mouse quotes generated on a whim, no problem. But only for a year. And so how do we do that? What a mess this is turning into. Just the questions. Just the questions is opening this up to being like gutted. Think of all the licensing, just the licensing. Like you have to get the copyright from every single thing or every license or signed agreement or whatever from every single thing you train. Yeah, that's huge. Is it possible or feasible to identify the degree to which a particular work contributes to a particular output from a generative AI system? Woo, man. This is such a beauty is in the eye of the beholder type thing. Like you could say, oh yeah, that kind of looks like an Andy Warhol, you know, is that kind of because it uses like solid color background or whatever, like duotones, like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he owns the copyright to that style. As a matter of fact, you can't copyright a style. We know this. So like, how are they going to do this? How are they going to, I could look up what makes Wes Anderson's style, his style, what words you use to describe Wes Anderson's style without calling it in the style of Wes Anderson. And it'll tell you retro, whimsical, symmetry, pastels. It will give you a list of things that you can add to your prompt or to whatever that will yield a result that would kind of look like a Wes Anderson without necessarily being his. What about generations that are made, but then those generations are used to train something entirely new just on those? What's the bad thing on that? So that's a great question. Obviously, I don't know the answer, but I know exactly what you're talking about because I've seen you do it. And like, it made me question it as well. You doing that made me question, like, where, at what point do we stop? I mean, it's like reclaimed wood, you know? It's like, I built a cabinet out of something that was made out of, you know, originally 25 different things, right? So this is a really good question. Derivatives of derivatives of derivatives. At what point does it become original art? We could go on the path of music, especially with hip hop and sampling based music, electronic music. Like it's derivative on derivative on derivative. Samples here, samples there, being put together to form a new song. How many rock songs have the same chord structures? A lot, right? Why don't we ask the Marvin Gaye Foundation? Why don't we ask them what they think about chord structures? If you didn't know, they just lost a court case with Ed Sheeran because they said that one of his songs used an obvious chord progression or something that was used in a Marvin Gaye song, and they lost. Thankfully, Ed Sheeran won. Yay. When you look at all these questions they're asking, it really does point to there needs to be an overhaul in how we approach and what we consider to be copyright. But we're so entrenched in copyright right now, and it's already lobbied so hard. Look at like Mickey Mouse, you know? There's no way Mickey Mouse is ever gonna be a public domain. They're just gonna continually keep that copyright going, trademark this, and it's just endless. Even though I think it's something like 50 years from its creation or something like that, then it's supposed to be. Like Steamboat Willie's supposed to be fucking free now. You could do anything you want with it. What would be the economic impacts of licensing a requirement on the development and adoption of generative AI systems? So everything we just talked about, all of the hassle, all of the coordination, all of the subdivisions and departments that would have to be established, all the reassessment of copyright law in general. What would be the economic impacts of licensing and all that in just generative AI after they completely change everything? It's going to be a mess. Transparency, record keeping. Woo! Copyrightability. Ooh, okay, we're going to skim through here. In order to allow copyright owners to determine whether their works have been used, should developers of AI models be required to collect, retain, and disclose records of regarding the materials used to train their models? Should creators of training data sets have a similar obligation? Okay, so I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but just to break it down again, whenever you make like you train, for example, a LoRa or a model, just to say an AI model, you have usually like a couple folders or directories or a million subdirectories of data that is sourced. And in the examples of, like, if we want to use AI image generation as an example, basically what it looks like is a folder full of like 20 images, and each image has like an accompanying text file that explains what's in the image. And in that text file is where you would say, like if you're training a person, right? Like say I was training a Mike B, then I would say Mike B, like man or something, right? Comma, wearing a shirt, comma, talking to a microphone, comma, lights in the background, comma, wood finish, comma, wood table, comma, right? That's the stuff you're describing, what you see in that text file. And so that exists for a lot of image generators. For language stuff, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if they just throw a bunch of text files in there or what. I'm not entirely sure, but this is this is a data set that you have when you train it. And so they're looking at it now. Okay, we know you have that data. You are choosing to get rid of it when you finish. If you don't have it, then you're getting rid of essentially what could be evidence to show that you have violated some kind of copyright. AI audio is getting so good that we really need to have a way to definitively tell that it's AI generated for legal reasons. Okay. So, looking back at like the introduction of Photoshop and the mass adoption of Photoshop, there was a lot of stuff that we could do in Photoshop that would be discrete, that you couldn't necessarily look at and say that's Photoshopped, right? As a matter of fact, we have a meme, right? It says that's shot. I could tell by the pixels, and having seen quite a few pixels in my time. Okay, so we know that this is a widely accepted and widely used tool. Now, we never had to label something as being Photoshopped. And AI, in its current state, can already be used as an additional tool / utility for non-generated medium. And we don't have to say that we used AI in it. I do, because I think it's exciting and interesting, right? I'll take a regular picture and I'll blow it up like this, not making it bigger, but adding a bunch of shit around the borders to make it look like I had a wider shot. And I'll brag about it. I'll be like, 75% of this picture is AI, because it's cool, but I don't have to disclose that. And so why, because of AI, should we be required to disclose it when we've never had to disclose any kind of image manipulation in the past, right? So that's where I'm at with it. Like, I think right now, because there's a lot of standalone stuff that we're using AI for, like, text generation, straight up rendering entire blocks of text, image generation, straight up rendering images from scratch, not even modifying an image, but just making something out of nothing. That's one part of how we use AI now, and it's going to become an even smaller part of how we use AI in the future. Now, I want regulation for certain AI creation, at least to specify what is AI generated and by who, but I don't want an overzealous copyright infringement laws where you can barely mention Eminem without being cease and desist to shit because it might look like Eminem. Yeah. It might sound like, or whatever. Yeah. Right now, there is using, like with image generation, using VAE encoding, they can put in a watermark of sorts, but you can turn it off. It's open source, so you can turn it off. You can find ways to get around it. So they're trying to slip in some kind of tracking or watermark or something into the images that are generated using AI. Now, whether that's something that's going to be readable by the average person, that remains to be seen. As far as I know, there's no way to necessarily go and discern whether something is AI generated or not using any kind of tool. It's always like some stupid thing they use in colleges to see if your texts have been generated using ChatGPT. But we all saw what happened there. Ended up being total bullshit, right? I think the danger for audio is situations where you have instances of people posting AI audio of your favorite celeb going on a racist rant or something like that. Fighting that would be pretty hard if the audio sounds good enough. Yeah, that's problematic for sure. That is definitely problematic. In its current state, you could probably listen because AI voice is not necessarily completely refined. Some cases you could listen to it and you can tell that it's AI generated, right? But even then, you might only know that it's AI generated because the quality. And if the quality of, like, say, my microphone or my recording that I'm doing with my real voice is equal to that, then you might not be able to tell the difference. And so the issue of, celebs or politicians going on a racist rant or whatever, I told my dad when I was kind of breaking him into the whole AI thing when I was there in Indiana, right? I was like, Dad, I need to catch you up on this because even though we're on different sides of the aisle, you need to know that this technology exists and everyone is using it. And in that same week, actually, Ron DeSantis put out a political ad against Donald Trump where he used a picture of Donald Trump hugging Anthony Fauci, which had never happened. But I pointed it out to him because I was like, you need to know that this technology is here and we have no obligation to tell you that we're using it for these purposes. If there's some outlandish audio that's released that is audio only, of course, and it sounds like, it's somebody saying blank or whatever, then you have to take that with a huge grain of salt because you can't trust it. You really can't trust it. Let's see, we've had same things like that in Jay-Z's song that was just spot on. You couldn't tell that it was AI at all. It took them a lot of work to train the audio to be that good, but it was still really good. You would be surprised on how much audio they probably didn't use to train that voice. As a matter of fact, thank you, Diego, actually. There are some, where's this video at? Here's an audio, real-time voice cloning, okay? So check this out.
This is a voice cloning toolbox. It allows you to clone the voice of someone from only 5 seconds of audio and to synthesize speech with that same voice.
Really was impressed with them. I thought that they did so well, and it was a tough final. I think
there's a way to measure the acute emotional intelligence that has never gone out of style.
He goes on to do this a bunch of times with a bunch of different samples. This video is 4 years old. Okay, this is not new. So this is 2-3 seconds of audio that is then flipped to sound like that person. In terms of like copywriting it, that's another question that they want to answer here with this huge list of questions. It's like, how do we, with transparency and record keeping, how do we like figure out what is and what isn't, and how do we license things? How do we retain data sets? A lot of that. Copyright and copyright law. There are circumstances when a human using a generative AI system should be considered the author of material produced by the system. If so, what factors are relevant to that determination? For example, is selecting what material an AI model is trained on and or providing an iterative series of text commands or prompts sufficient to claim authorship over the resulting output? And that is like the absolute base base possible input you could give is just a text line without necessarily taking into consideration anything else, right? There's lots of other ways that you can generate images, generate music that don't necessarily rely on text at all, because we have ways for doing references and stuff now. So I can put in one reference photo or two reference photos, one with a bunch of bright colors, the other one with a stick figure, and we'll get a rainbow colored stick figure or something, you see? So without using any kind of text. So this is already super basic stuff here. Are there any revisions of the Copyright Act necessary to clarify the human authorship requirement or to provide additional standards to determine when content, including AI generated material, is subject to copyright protection? Ooh, I want to say that the UK had something like this come up. Yeah, this is looking at, how much human input is required for them to say that it is not subject to copyright or is subject to copyright or cannot be qualified as something that can be copyrighted because of what percentage of it is AI generated. Does existing copyright protection for computer code that operates a generative AI system provide sufficient incentives? Ooh. So these are great questions. We're at the end here, so it's basically like, well, wait a minute. Do we even need to do all this stuff? So, I mean, the trend here you're seeing is like they want to have some kind of protections in place because they know that things are being made using AI. And as of right now, they don't know how to copyright it. Okay? But things are not going to stop being made. They're just going to keep making shit. I'm going to keep making stuff. You guys are keep making stuff. And it's just going to keep happening. So they are playing catch up right now. And they want to continue to promote technological advances and stuff like that and open source stuff because they know that can benefit, the U.S. first and foremost, but that could benefit industries greatly. So they don't necessarily want to overregulate, but at the same time, they know they need some kind of regulation. Let's see. I hope after the SAG and SWA strikes get resolved, there will be more ideas about how to deal with AI content generation. Do you think that that's going to get resolved in any manner that's going to support existing actors and writers? Because I don't know, man. I know that some studios have already bent the knee, but I feel like studios are just stalling. I feel like the strike had to happen now. The strike, they could not postpone that strike because the more time that passes, the more ingrained and fully encompassing AI becomes. And so in that industry, in the movie and show and the showbiz, that industry is already starting to get it. And so yeah, they had to do that now because if it's already ingrained, it's already being used and everything, then studios will be very comfortable saying, you know what? We don't need real people anymore. Let's see, labeling. Hey, guns, look at this. Labeling. Should the law require AI generated material to be labeled or otherwise publicly identified as being generated by AI? Ooh, see? Who should be responsible for identifying a work as AI generated? Ooh, the platform, the person, the generator, the creator of the generator. I used to work in a medical implant manufacturing bones, screws, and plates. Ooh, FDA requires documentation on who, what, where, every aspect. Aerospace is very similar. Maybe something like that has to exist for content creation. Whew. Oh, man. Yeah, it definitely puts a lot of the onus on the creator to do more work. And, man, it makes it tough. The hardest part about making videos for YouTube is getting them on YouTube, right? Because you gotta edit the shit. You gotta you make a thumbnail. You gotta have a catchy title. You gotta your description, whatever is gonna be in the description. Hashtags. You gotta promote it on your social media platforms, and so that's the hardest part of making content, and that is a deal breaker for a lot of folks because they don't have the focus to be able to do it. They don't have the dedication to be able to do it. They don't have the know-how to be able to successfully do it, right? To do it right. Not just, upload it, generic thumbnail, whatever. There's ways that you have to do it, right? And so I think this is a good idea, right? To be able to have, and this covered here, by the way, of possibly making it so that people who generate stuff have to also retain their data sets. under risk of penalty or something, it still adds a lot more work. Documentation. I mean, I'm fucking like 50% of you guys are coders. How many of you guys are like hyper dedicated to commenting on every single thing you do? And so it becomes cumbersome, another layer that we have to do at our level. So AI generated public identified. So do we have to note in our AI generated material whether or not we are using AI generated material? Who has to do it? Are there technical or practical barriers to doing it? If a notification and labeling requirement is adopted, what should be the consequences of failure to label a particular work or the removal of a label? What is the punishment if I use Photoshop on an image that I put out and I don't disclose that I used AI to add, some corner of the image? All right, lastly, what legal rights, if any, currently apply to AI generated material that features the name or likeness, including vocal likeness, of a particular person? Well, right now, it seems like we don't really have any definitive laws that directly cover artificial intelligence generated vocals for a song. However, it has not stopped companies from successfully removing songs that are too close, or not even be too close, successfully removing songs that feature artists that are signed to their label. We had that happen with Jay-Z. We had that happen with Eminem. I want to say this also happened with The Weeknd. So it is something that has occurred. You've heard The Weeknd songs, yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, they are actively getting these songs removed when there is no clear-cut case of, or clear-cut copyright law that covers that. What they're saying is there anything that exists right now? And as we go through here, they're going to say, should we establish a new federal right similar to the state law rights of publicity that should apply to AI generated material? So it's like, do we have anything? Probably not. Should we make something that will cover it? You already know that the RIAA, the music industry, and the movie industry will definitely be doing everything they can to be able to control the voice, the likeness rights. Already, they own the likeness and the whatever, I'm not about the voice, but they definitely own the likeness for stuff for promotional purposes, for like movies and shit, right? They already own that, license it, right? So that's what they're going to be lobbying for. So you could probably go ahead and guess that there will be an established federal system that would apply to AI generated material. Are there or should there be protections against AI system generating outputs that imitate the artistic style of a human creator, such as an AI system producing visual works in the style of a specific artist? Why, who should be eligible for such protection? What form should it take? Whoo, man. See, this is directly impacting us and what we've discussed here. And it says, yes, I don't think they can because they, you already can't copyright a trademark or style. But they're asking this probably because they want to, or not necessarily want to, but they want to know if they should. They specifically state in the style of a specific artist, right? And I already mentioned before, you could just describe what that artist's style is like and probably get pretty close if you have a pretty good description. Just imagine a flurry of copyright infringement suits that would come up. Especially right now on Civet AI, which is a basically image generation resource. It's like Spriter's resource, but for image generation. It is completely full of tons of potential copyright violations, like big time. If this in the style of thing ever got implemented, that site would just disappear. Please identify any issues not mentioned above that the Copyright Office should consider in conducting this study. So, and then you can go, they show you all the terms, they explain everything here, lots of footnotes, lots of references, and then you can go through and you can leave a comment and say, no. All right, so that's where we're at. So the date release, we're going to move on from this, but the date for this notice was posted on August 30th, so just a few days, and it ends in 47 days. So if you would like, you could go through and you could place a comment there. You could read and research this if you'd like to. There's the link.
/www.federalregister.gov/documents/2023 08 32,023 18,624 artificial intelligence and copyright hash.
All right, did you write that down? Okay, good. Let's move on. So play as AI run and see what it generates. Okay, fine. Whoa! This is what the link made. I literally took the link and I put it in. Maybe I misunderstood the instructions. I'm sorry. I literally put the link and I put it in, and that's what we got. All right, it's a winner.